In the sweltering heat of July 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, then a thriving hub of the Holy Roman Empire, a woman named Frau Troffea stepped into the street and began to dance. To a casual observer, it might have looked like a bizarre display of fervor, but as the hours stretched into days, it became clear that something was profoundly wrong. She wasn't dancing for fun. She was dancing in a state of involuntary, agonizing desperation. She couldn't stop, and before the month was out, she wouldn't be the only one. Within days, others began to join her. Some were family members, others were total strangers. All pulled into a rhythmic, relentless cycle of movement they were seemingly powerless to resist. By the time August arrived, the number of people caught in this bizarre phenomenon had swelled to nearly 400. But what exactly was driving these people to dance themselves to the brink of death? And why did the authorities make the decision that would arguably make the situation even worse? To understand the gravity of the situation, we have to step into the mindset of the 16th century. Strasbourg in 1518 was a place defined by rigid social structures and deep religious superstition. When the dancers collapsed, they didn't just see it as a medical problem, they saw it as a spiritual crisis. The phenomenon became known as the Dance of Saint Vitus. According to local folklore, the saint had the power to curse those who offended him with this relentless, uncontrollable shaking. Fear gripped the city. If this was a curse, the only way out was through the divine. However, the medical practitioners of the time relied on a logic that, to our modern ears, sounds like something out of a horror story. Instead of stopping the dancing, the local authorities and physicians believed that the dancers needed to sweat out their affliction. They reasoned that the only way to cure the dancers was to keep them moving until the sickness left their bodies. In a move that would be baffling by today's standards, city officials constructed a wooden stage and even went as far as to hire professional pipers and drummers to play music. They effectively fueled the fire, providing a soundtrack to what was essentially a mass physiological breakdown. We have to dispel a major myth right here. These were not people celebrating a festival. While modern pop culture might depict the dancing as a joyous, frenzied party, the reality recorded by contemporary witnesses was quite the opposite. The dancers were in agony. They were heard crying, begging for help, and struggling to stop their own limbs from thrashing. It was a scene of mass physical exhaustion, with participants suffering from broken bones, heart attacks, and strokes, all while being forced by the treatment to continue their movements. So what could possibly cause a community to lose control of their own bodies in such a synchronized, terrifying way? Scientists and historians have debated this for centuries, and several theories have emerged. One of the most common suggestions is ergot poisoning. Ergot is a mold that grows on rye bread and contains hallucinogenic properties similar to LSD. In theory, if the population consumed tainted grain, they might experience tremors and hallucinations. However, there is a significant problem with this theory. If you've ever seen someone suffering from the physical effects of ergotism, you know they aren't capable of running a marathon, let alone dancing for days on end. The physical toll of the toxin would make the sustained activity of the dancing plague physiologically impossible. That leads us to a more compelling, albeit chilling, explanation: mass psychogenic illness. In this scenario, extreme stress, famine, and the omnipresent threat of disease in 16th century Strasbourg created a powder keg of psychological pressure. When Frau Troffea began her involuntary movements, the latent stress of the entire community acted as a callus. It became a collective, subconscious reaction to the unbearable pressures of daily life. In a society that lived in fear of religious curses, the mind effectively triggered a physical response that the body couldn't override. We should also address the gaps in our records. While some chronicles claim that as many as 15 people died per day, historians are highly skeptical of these numbers. Record keeping in the 16th century was inconsistent at best, and such figures were likely exaggerations added by later writers to emphasize the tragedy. Even the very name Frau Troffea appears in very few primary sources, leading some scholars to wonder if certain details were embellished over the centuries. Was there actually a wooden stage built by the city council, or was that a layer of dramatic storytelling added to the myth? We may never know for sure. By September 1518, the plague began to dissipate. The survivors were eventually taken to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, where they were given red shoes and asked to perform religious rites, effectively marking the end of the crisis. The event left a permanent mark on the collective memory of the region, signaling a shift in how authorities began to understand human behavior. It was one of the first times that a large-scale irrational phenomenon was analyzed not just as a spiritual punishment, but as a crisis that demanded a different kind of public management. The dancing plague of 1518 remains one of history's most baffling psychological puzzles. It serves as a reminder of how quickly the veneer of social order can crumble when the human mind is pushed to its absolute limit. It wasn't magic, and it wasn't a party. It was a tragic, desperate manifestation of a society under immense pressure, caught in a cycle of fear that they were unable to dance their way out of. What do you think really happened in the streets of Strasbourg? Was it the byproduct of a community's collective stress, or is there a scientific factor we still haven't accounted for? Share your theories in the comments below. If you found this dive into the past fascinating, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the mysteries of history. Thanks for watching.